am so excited to get to speak to you in this manner. I miss seeing you at church. I know that you miss coming to church. I just want you to know that as a congregation, we are all praying for you. We know that being out of school, not getting to see your friends, and your regular schedule being changed each and every day, that this is difficult. And we want you to know that we all know these are different things that we haven't experienced before. But we remember the Bible verse and hold it to ourselves that God will never leave us nor forsake us. Another favorite verse of mine is, when I am afraid, I will trust in thee, which means when I feel afraid, I know that God is the one that I trust and that he is in control and he is watching out for us. So, one of my favorite parts of worship is the children's time. And so I wanted to see if we could do something that would help you feel that you were at children's time at church. I want to thank Nancy for helping me do this. And so it is with appreciation for her efforts that we bring this to you. The first thing I want to do is read you a story. I love to read stories, and especially this one. This story is directly from the Bible. It tells us about God's faithfulness to his people, and these are the things that we need to remember right now as well. The name of this book is The Walls of Jericho. This is in the Old Testament. The Walls of Jericho. God had always promised the Israelites that one day he would rescue them from slavery in Egypt and give them a new land in which to live. At last the time came, and Moses led his people out of Egypt. But life was still hard for the Israelites. They wandered for 40 days in the desert before drawing near to their new home. Sadly, Moses, who was a very old man by then, died before he could enter the promised land. God chose Joshua to be the Israelites' new leader. You shall have all of this land, which is called Canaan, God told Joshua. I shall be with you, just as I was with Moses. So there is no need to be afraid as long as you obey my laws. And here is the illustration. Luckily, the two spies met a woman called Rahab, who was friendly to the Israelites. She took the two men into her home, which was built into the city wall, hurried them up to the flat roof, and hid them under a pile of flax. She was just in time. The two strangers had been spotted creeping into Rahab's house, and a few minutes later, the king's soldiers knocked on her door. Rahab went downstairs and told the guards that the men had already left the city. The soldiers believed her and hurried away. Rahab returned to the roof. So when the government heard that the two spies were there, they issued a warrant for their arrest. And so Rahab helped them not to get arrested. "Why are you helping us?" asked the spies. So they crawled out from their hiding place. "I know God wants you to have this land," explained Rahab, "and I believe he will give you victory. Just promise that when you capture Jericho, my family and I will be kept safe." The spies promised. When it was dark, Rahab lowered a rope from her window. Before he climbed down, one of the spies gave Rahab a red cord. "Put this in your window," he said. "When our soldiers see it, they will know that they must protect this house." When the spies arrived back at the Israelite camp, they told Joshua everything they had seen. "We will attack the city," Joshua announced, "but first we must cross the river Jordan." The river Jordan was very wide, and the Israelites had no boats. But Joshua obeyed God's instruction. He told the priest who carried the gold box called the ark, which held God's laws, to step into the water first. As they did so, the river stopped flowing, leaving a dry path across the other bank. The priest waited on the path while the rest of the Israelites crossed. When the priests stepped ashore, too, the river began to flow once again. "We have reached the promised land at last," cried the Israelites, and they thanked God for bringing them safely to the end of their long journey. "Pick 12 large stones from the river and put them in a pile," Joshua ordered. "The stones will represent the 12 tribes of Israel, and they will remind us of how God brought us into this new land." The Israelites then began to move toward the city of Jericho. They looked at the high walls and the strong gates, but they did not attack the city right away, because God had given Joshua some very strange instructions. Joshua called the puzzled Israelites around him to tell them God's plan. "God promised us that we will capture the city," he announced, "but it will take 7 days. You must all do exactly as I tell you. Every day for 6 days, we will all walk once around the city walls. 7 priests will lead us, blowing their trumpets. Behind them will come the other priests, carrying the ark. The rest of us will follow in silence." So each day for 6 days, the Israelites marched once around the city, just as God had ordered. The people of Jericho stood on the high walls, watching in amazement. The only sound they could hear were the loud trumpet blast blown by the Israelite priest and the tramp, tramp, tramp made by the thousands of marching feet. On the 7th day, the Israelites walked around the walls of Jericho 7 times. Then they stopped and faced the city. Suddenly the trumpets blew loudly, and all the Israelites began to shout. The noise was deafening. When the echoes died away, everyone could hear a faint rumble sound which grew louder and louder. The Israelites watched in amazement as the mighty walls of the great city of Jericho began to shake, and the huge cracks appeared between the stones. Then, with an earth-shaking, roaring crash, the walls of Jericho crumbled and fell to the ground. "Now," shouted Joshua, before the dust had settled, "attack." The Israelites rushed forward, cheering. They scrambled over the broken walls and within a very short time captured the city. Some of the Israelites rushed off to find Rahab. The Israelite soldiers spotted the red cord tied to Rahab's window and pulled her and her family to safety. Joshua then reminded his people, "We captured Jericho because we trusted in God. God will also help us all to live happily in the promised land if we trust and believe in Him."